Everybody in that apartment complex was just like, yeah, you can't be here anymore. So I left. The truth is that everywhere that I would go, neighbors who knew me saw what was going on, but nobody said anything. Especially when I was living with the Barnetts. Why? I don't know. I want to know the answers to these questions. I was a little girl. I was 7 years old. Oh. Just looking at the house. It's just like everything's coming back.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like, my brain is everywhere right now.
Yeah.
And like just looking at the house, like it just reminds me of when Christine had me walk all the way around the block with no shoes. And my feet were bleeding by the time I got to the steps.
Wow.
And she was mad about it. I couldn't even go in the house, like she had to clean my feet outside. But she used this brush. And it hurt. And I told her it did, but she didn't listen to me. There's just so much. My brain is like everywhere. It's like replaying everything over and over again.
Well, I'm sorry about those experiences. It's gonna be all right. It's gonna be all right.
Even like just looking at the front of the house, I just remember what happened in there. It literally feels like a haunted house. I'm blessed to even be alive. The time that Christine made me walk all the way around that block, she wouldn't even let me get my shoes. Neighbors were driving by, nobody stopped and said anything, and nobody even tried to help me.
From Natalia's perspective, the abuse was like in the open. And, you know, nobody in the neighborhood came to assist her. When I was with the Barnetts, I wanted to tell the neighbors everything that happened to me, but they knew Christine and Michael really well. Like, they were really good friends, I guess. And they wouldn't have believed me. They would have just thought I was just making up a story. So it was just like, I didn't know what else to do. And I was scared. I was scared if I did say something, what would Christine do? Gracie was like my best friend.
Natalia came to our house a lot to play with my daughter, Grace. For a long time, I thought they were like connected at the hip. And then Christine, she just said that Natalia was trying to kill her. And I went to Grace and said, you know what, we need to find some new friends to play with. Because I didn't want to have anything to do with that little girl. If she was trying to kill Christine, my friend, she wasn't welcome in her house. I don't want to try killing my daughter or me.
Gracie's parents, they were so nice. But with everything that Christine said about me, it changed their minds. I couldn't even see Gracie anymore.
Nobody stood up for me. I want to find out why.
Hi. How are you?
I'm all right.
Good. I don't know if you remember me.
I do.
Okay, good. You look so good. All pretty.
Thank you.
Aw. Want to sit down?
Sure.
All right. You all right?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna leave that right here.
Okay. Yeah, that's perfect. Do you remember coming over here and playing and stuff?
I do.
You do?
Yeah.
We had lots of fun. We really did. We went in our playroom and we went
Yeah.
and played down here and colored and did all that kind of stuff. Feels like forever ago.
I know, it really does.
But yeah, I mean, it's been a while, so it's like hard for me to remember what we've done, but we did a lot of stuff together.
Yeah. What exactly did Christine tell you when she came here?
So she came over and she was crying when she told me this stuff. So she was like, Natalia was putting thumbtacks on the steps. So when we walk up the steps, we would step on them. And I was like, okay. And she said, hiding knives in the mattress. I'm like, okay. And like, that's what scared me. And I just sat here in such shock. So I was like, what?
There's so many things that the Barnetts have said that they've tried to paint me as some crazy person. And literally, I'm a kid wanting to play with other kids, and everybody is looking at me as a 22-year-old. So they're all creeped out and thinking I'm trying to be a pedophile to a kid. I didn't even get a chance to say goodbye to Gracie. It was just like scissors going through a piece of paper. It was just cut off. I didn't know why. All I knew was I missed my best friend. I was a kid. And you didn't think twice about it. Didn't think twice about, the fact but she looks like a little girl. How are they saying she's an adult? You just took their word for it. Nobody investigated. Why didn't you ask did you ask?
I asked them, I didn't ask you.
Why didn't you come to me?
I should have.
Why? I was around all the time. You said that you didn't see anything. So why was that so easy to believe?
I didn't want to believe any of it, but I felt like she pushed me to believe it.
That's what she did with a lot of people.
I mean, they are good talkers. Yeah, trust me, I feel terrible.
Nobody ever asked me. Nobody ever thought, hey, maybe we should get both sides of the story. Everybody just went with what Christine and Michael said. And the fact is that The fact is, when I got into my apartment in Westfield, I was on this medicine. And she pretty much overdosed me. Did I ever try to hurt Gracie? Did I ever try to do anything?
And I explained that to them. I said this was all so hard to believe because you were always so...
Why did you believe in it, though? Do I look like a murderer to you?
Honey, if I knew what was really going on, I should have asked. I would have snatched you up in a heartbeat.
Why didn't you?
I'm not gonna lie. I think I was kind of scared of her. And what she could do.
Did you ever think of what she was doing to me?
Unfortunately, no. I'm very ashamed of it. I mean, I am. I had no reason not to believe her. Like, she manipulated me. I mean,
She manipulated everybody.
I mean, I'm angry as well, trust me. Like, seeing all of this and you and hearing this, like, I mean, she's a horrible, horrible human being. Hands down. Hands down.
I don't want to talk to Christine again. Never. I don't want to see her again. I didn't even want to see her in the trial. But Michael reached out, said he wanted to talk, said he wanted to apologize. We can try again. I'll talk to you, I'll listen to what you gotta say. But I have a lot of questions. And I'm hoping that this time you'll be truthful and answer them.
I've never tried to forget Natalia as much as I want to forget it. One of the 5 best days of my life was the day that we adopted Natalia. As much as I want to block that, put that in the past, put that away, it's real. It's still there. I have very little things that survived from my previous life. This is actually a cross that was given to Natalia with her middle name, Grace, on it, right after Natalia came home with us. It was hanging up on the wall of her bedroom. Natalia, I would like to apologize directly to you and not the world. If we ever get a moment where we can have a conversation, where we can speak, where we can talk, you'll get that. But at the same time, I'm realistic enough to know that from other people's points of view, I'm probably the devil.
My name is Ken Maxwell. I have over 30 years of law enforcement experience, the vast majority of which was with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. My last position there was the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Counterterrorism Branch in the New York field office. Following my retirement from the FBI, with my considerable investigative experience, the Natalia Grace case was more than intriguing to me. When we first started out, it was a classic whodunit. But as we gathered more information, it has evolved into a how and a why. Why did all these things take place? We can't get into Christine's mind or Michael's mind. However, based upon the evidence that we've been able to uncover, interviews of people, documents, their own messaging between each other, it amounts to circumstantial evidence that gives us a glimpse into what they were thinking at the time that helps support the notion that there was a purposeful plan. Securing an apartment for Natalia in Lafayette was the next step of the plan to get rid of Natalia from the Barnett family, for good. Placing Natalia in this apartment in Lafayette that was totally unsuitable for a disabled person. Was Christine exhibiting a depraved indifference for Natalia as a human being? Or was the hate so strong that she just didn't care, just to leave somebody in an environment like that with little or no safety protection?
Christine dropped me off at that apartment. I didn't know how to take care of myself. I didn't know what to do.
It seems Christine has one move left to try to get rid of Natalia, but she's not going to stop there. She's moving on to Michael next. A disabled 9-year-old left alone in a dangerous neighborhood to fend for herself. This was no accident. This was intentional. Natalia was left in harm's way in what appears to be Christine's final move to get rid of her for good.
I found out I was moving to Lafayette once we were already there. She helped me move in, and then once we were done moving in, I find out that that's where I'm gonna actually be living, and they're moving to Canada.
Through the investigation, we find out that she got moved into the Westfield apartment and her specialized shoes were taken from her in her walker. And here in Lafayette, the same scenario. She didn't have either one of those things. She just doesn't have them. When I show up to this apartment, I mean, it is not catered to a person that is a little person. I'm just completely shocked.
There was nobody there to help me get anything from the top shelf or anything like that. It was not an easy thing doing it on my own. but I had to kind of adapt to it. Christine came maybe twice. After that, Michael came once. And I never saw them again after those 3 months.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
Talk about memories.
For real. These stairs were not easy. Ow. Okay. I would have to climb up there, and then when I would get to the second step, I would just pull the thing. Had to stand on that step for 5 minutes just to unlock the door. And then once I would get it open, I'd already be tired from standing trying to open it. And then it was like
12 steps after walking up these 5 plus that stump.
plus
And then
the
if I
actual.
remember right, there's like a flooring when you first go in, then there's 12 steps going up.
Yes. I couldn't even reach the mailbox.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I probably should
You
sit
want me
down
to
though.
sit so you can lean on me?
Yeah, that probably work. Oh, jeez. Okay, you know what?
I got you.
My knee is trying to lock.
You want to sit?
Yeah.
You know, this was like 17 stairs just right here. So she had to do all this on her own when she was so much more smaller and less stable. You know, she was Jesus, that's scary.
Are you for real?
Yeah.
Please tell me that was a firework.
Oh, Jesus. Not today, Satan.
That sounded real close.
Not this block, but the next block. That's
That
what it
sounded
like.
really loud.
We just heard a gunshot here, and
Yeah.
you were how old?
I was
9 and a half.
I was 8. I turned 9 when I met you guys.
Okay. So 9 years old.
Yeah.
And she was walking through this area herself. Anything could have happened.
I thank God it didn't.
Jesus.
Oh, okay.
I'm ready to go. Her family just dropped her off in Lafayette and went to Canada. Who does that? It makes me angry. It makes me want to just scream at Christine. Because why would you do that to her? Why did Natalia deserve that? Because Christine didn't fit into your agenda?
I'm at work. I get a phone call from Christine. The exact words are, Michael, quit your job, call your boss. You need to come home right now. We're moving to Canada. And she hung up. So I come rushing home. Christine rents a car, takes the boys, leaves the country, goes to Canada to go find a place to live. And Christine tells me that you have to sell everything we own. And then I joined my family up in Canada.
The steps that Christine took with Michael in Canada are at least indicative of part of her plan, possibly, that she got rid of Natalia. Now it's time to rid myself of my husband, Michael.
It culminates into she's even going to alienate his sons against him.
While we were in Canada, there were fights every day. I was driving with the family, and Christine was just screaming and yelling at me. You are not helpful. You are nothing. You are worthless. You are replaceable. The book money, it's all mine. The Hollywood money, it's all mine. Mentally, this was my snapping point with Christine. I tell her, I've had it. I'm leaving you. Anger builds. Shut up or I'll kill you. Mine, everything's mine, you're worthless. Shut up or I'll kill you. You're nothing, mine. Shut up or I'll kill you. I shouldn't have said it. Absolutely shouldn't have said it. Angel voice comes out. Public persona hits the brakes and comes out. She spins, turns to the boys in the back seat. Boys, Dad's gonna kill all of us. It's okay. I'm gonna protect you. Every day, Christine would tell them, your dad's dangerous, and he's gonna kill you. Next thing you know, suddenly my kids are terrorized. And they sleep with knives next to their bed because they're afraid of their dad coming to Canada to kidnap them and kill them.
Christine went to a Canadian therapist, a mental health professional, and told her what had occurred, that Michael was a danger to Christine and to the boys, a physical threat to the family.
At this point in time, I had moved back to Indiana. Later, I would come to find out. The moment she stopped shouting and turned into the angelic protector, she had palmed the cell phone. She had hit record on it. She takes the recording, not long thereafter, to the Ontario police and tries to convince them that we are in danger.
So this fight that Michael and Christine had, and she pulls out her phone and she videotaped threats that Michael was making in the heat of the moment are now living on forever. That's parallel to Natalia's experience with the pledge incident, where Natalia says she pulled out her phone and made me do it and then used it as evidence that she caught me, poisoning her coffee. So this is Christine creating a narrative to her benefit and perhaps to scare Michael.
And then she calls me up to tell me,
this was like, you have committed a crime and we're about to lock you up.
Christine was masterful at understanding a situation she could exploit immediately on camera. Christine got him so upset, and they were fighting, that she turned a camera on him as he was saying, I'll kill you, I'll kill you. And she took it to the police in order to keep him in the United States.
It's terrible, Michael. Extremely scary. They interviewed me 3 times, 2.5 hours of this, with a detective in a bulletproof vest. He was yelling these questions at me. I'm just terrified. The boys are shaking. But I did my very best to protect you. This is worse than Natalia. And I do think you intend to cause me bodily harm. To be totally honest, you're cracking your knuckles at me.
Wasn't going to, and I didn't, but I can understand you
Please
feeling
don't
that
go
way.
into your weirdo freaky denial. I can't deal with that right now. I mean, they could put our kids in foster care in the U.S. I mean, I had every reason to be a complete to you, and I was not.
Did I...
Very good if you just quit talking. Quit it. This is not the time for pretending that you've never done anything bad. Here I'm telling you that you're going in there to face a 2-year jail sentence. Your kids are shaking in the car. Did you hear my kids are scared? Did you hear,
Christine, Chris,
that I was nice to you?
Chris,
Did you hear these
calm down.
things? Listen to me. I was a good person to you. And I want you to know that. And I was pissed off. It was Valentine's Day. You think I'm screwing people? I don't have anybody in my life. You just think that. Now, you didn't intend to cause bodily harm, but I told them that I thought you were having road rage. I don't know what they're going to do. They contacted immigration. I'm going to be dealing with immigration. Never come up here, Michael. Just stay in the U.S.
After Michael came back from Canada, he lived with us. Michael would have his door closed and he would be talking to Christine, trying to talk to the boys, whatever. And she would just be screaming at him. Christine would scream crazy things at him, calling him a psycho and calling him an abuser.
She used that incident to tell my kids forever that I was a wanted man in Canada, that I couldn't enter the country of Canada, that I had charges waiting for me in Canada.
It seems Christine wanted Michael to be in the U.S. while she's in Canada with Jacob and the boys. Now, if that's true, why? Well, maybe because she wanted Michael to be the sole parent responsible for Natalia, who at this point is their dependent and maybe a dependent forever. And if something were to happen to Natalia, she could just claim ignorance. Like, I'm in Canada, I'm not even in the country. It's on Michael.
She even engaged in a conversation at one point where she wanted Michael to be the trustee of Natalia's affairs. We know that from Facebook communications. Christine was almost leaving him holding the bag to do all this.
You were asked about personal knowledge about her being neglected or left in this apartment. So if you want to respond as to what Natalia told you or sent you, I think that would be appropriate.
So, okay, I have a picture of her looking like she has bruises all over her face. Her hair is chopped off. She looks miserable in an apartment that she and the man told me were up a flight of stairs.
This is when she was living alone. Does anybody know what happened? So when you drop a little disabled 6-year-old off, what the hell happened? Oh, it's horrible. She has what looks like
maybe black eyes.
Black eyes, and her
scrape across her
scrape
nose.
Across the bridge of her nose. I mean,
look at the way she walks. I mean, she could have fallen, you know? I mean, who knows?
she could have fallen down all those stairs that they put her on.
Yeah,
She was in a second-story apartment.
So at trial, the main points that we had were, as a dependent, she was in a second-floor apartment. They didn't set her up with any doctors. They didn't set her up with anyone to assist her as far as hygiene, cooking, cleaning, clothes. Michael had a duty to care for her, which he failed to do so when he abandoned her in Lafayette in a situation that endangered her life or health.
I remember my power actually being shut off in the Lafayette apartment for like a week, and it was in the middle of summer, like it was burning hot. I remember like everything in the fridge went bad, like, and I couldn't go grocery shopping. And I was scared. I was really scared. Like, I could have died. I grew up way too early. I've had to learn lessons that I should have learned when I'm maybe like just now turning 20. I should be learning those life lessons. It felt literally like I had to grow up overnight.
Michael, being left in Indiana, did do some things, possibly even unintentionally. We have communications where he's questioning Christine, why did you shut off the electricity? There was no air conditioner. Why did you take her phone? If Christine was trying to set up Michael to take responsibility or take the fall for anything that happened to Natalia in Lafayette, these communications contradict that. They show her direct knowledge of why did you, Christine, shut off her phone? You know, why did you not pay the electric bill, you being Christine? So it makes her culpable, and in fact infers that Michael was not aware that Christine did these things.
Michael checked in on Natalia and became a lifeline for her. He had her electricity turned back on and air conditioning installed. He got her food and basically foiled Christine's plan. It was almost a victory for the Barnetts. But in the end, look at Christine's failures. She failed to get Natalia locked up criminally. She failed to get her committed to a psychiatric facility. She failed to get Michael to take the fall. And finally, the authorities get involved. When the director of the Adult Learning Center in Lafayette, Indiana, did what every other adult in Natalia's life had failed to do, call the police. Christine and Michael were really trying to erase Natalia from their lives. But once the police were involved, they launched an investigation in 2013 into who Natalia was, where she came from, how she got to the United States and to Indiana, and an apartment living by herself. Now, that statement she wrote at the Adult Learning Center was a biographical sketch given to the police. And in it, there were allegations which, if true, show that this child was abused long before she was in the Barnett household.
You wrote down the story of your life, right? Natalia is not unscathed. We know there were things that she came with to this country. As an investigator, it's really difficult to really know what the whole story about what happened to her as a baby, as a child.
This was September 11th of 2013. And it said, I was born in Ukraine, but I do not remember much, so I don't know my real parents. And I was in an orphanage, so I only remember the bad stuff. And then I got a shot, which made me pass out. And then when I woke up, I was in a baby orphanage. And I saw a guy put something on my face, like a towel or something. Yikes. I actually forgot I wrote this.
This is when everything started to turn for you. Things were starting to
This
change.
was, I wrote this, and then they took me to the police station.
And you're now at Lafayette, and you've been cut off, basically.
Pretty much. Thankfully, I had my parents.
You had this whole new door that opened up.
With the man's family. I don't know, it's just like I felt safe when I met my parents. Even though I didn't know who they were, but I felt safe. They let me be a kid. They let me be a 9-year-old all the way into teenager, all the way to now.
Antoine and Cynthia showed me what a dad and a mom are supposed to be like. They taught me what love is. So, this first one is me. That's me right there.
Wow.
That's me. I was like 2. I think I was like 2. That's what it looks like. I was so little.
Wow.
And then that is
Your mom and dad?
Yeah, that's my biological dad and mom.
Я постоянно об этом думаю. Честно сказать, я бы хотела, чтобы она была со мной. Я понимаю, что 19 лет – это срок не маленький, конечно. Ну, хотелось бы, чтобы она была со мной.
I don't want to open that door of a relationship with Anna. I get it, you probably do want to see me and everything like that, but I have a family here. I have my parents who raised me. Like, it's different with Anna because she only gave birth to me, but she let me go pretty much that same day. It started bringing in some hurt emotions because I haven't been in the Ukraine since I was 5. The things that I remember from being in the orphanage in Ukraine are not great. They're scary memories that I really don't like to think about anymore.
When Natalia was in the orphanage, most probably because they just didn't have the staff to support these kids one-on-one. And what they would have to do is en masse scare them into, getting into their beds and being quiet. And therefore, they use unusual tactics.
One time we were playing, we heard stomping, and everybody ran to the bedroom. But I knew I couldn't. And there was a couch behind me, and I hid behind the couch. There was like this big black cloak, and it was like this green mask. To me, it was like the monster under the bed. It heard me crying, and it turned my way, and I literally panicked. And I crawled to the very end where there was like a plant where it couldn't get me on that side. And I remember hearing it stomping, coming towards me, and then it just peeked behind the couch. And I was so scared. Like, I didn't know what was about to happen. And it just stared at me. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And it finally left. And then I remember
one of the people that was in the bedroom with the other kids came and hugged me, and then that was it. But like that was like the scariest moment of my life that I remember from that age. Like that was beyond scary because I didn't know what was happening. I don't know why anybody would want to scare a bunch of kids. A lot of stuff happened that just should not have happened. One thing I do remember is, it's very weird, but I was in an orphanage and I just remember like somebody just coming up and just covering my face, and I blacked out, and then it was like I woke up being carried, and I just remember just seeing a big building, looked like an apartment building. I remember being in a doctor's office, and then I remember getting a shot in my arm, and then after that I blacked out again, and then next thing I know I'm laying on a couch. This memory has always been like a mystery to me. And I can't remember anything about what he looked like. The next memory that I have after that is me back in the orphanage. Like, I don't know how I got back there or anything like that. When I'm trying to picture it, it's just like an invisible guy with a white t-shirt. Like, I just don't know what he looked like. I can't remember.
You remember this guy? I can hand it to you, and I'll take it back.
I don't even know. Like, how did y'all get this picture?
A lot of research.
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. Like, honestly, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to even think. Because, like, I know, like, more happened than what I remember, but it's like, I can't figure it out. Like, just seeing that, like, and not being able to remember is frustrating. But it's also scary because I don't know what he did. I don't know why I was with him. I don't know.
If Natalia had been traumatized in Ukraine, she needed a family to help her heal. But the Barnetts were not that family. They did the opposite. And then she's re-traumatized again.
The time I was in the Ukraine in the orphanage, after all that happened, the only thing I really wanted was a family who loves me, a family that protects me. And the Barnetts did none of that. They just hurt me more. Christine and Michael were never my parents, from day one. They never acted like my parents. Even though I'm still legally theirs right now, they are not my parents. Antoine and Cynthia Mans are my parents. So the only thing that's left connecting me to the Barnetts is my last name. And that's about to change as well.
I'm Peter Kenny. I practice law in Indianapolis, Indiana, primarily adoptions, foster care, and guardianship issues. What makes me want to take this case is I think it's about time that the system looked out for Natalia. I just wanted to see, why do you want to be in their family forever, and why do you want to be theirs?
They've actually been a family to me. They've showed me love. They've told me that they love me, and they've showed it. This would be my third adoption, and this will be my permanent adoption. I've been Tasha Gava, and then it was Natalia Ciccone, and then it was Natalia Barnett, and now it'll be Natalia Mans. With still being connected to the Barnett name and everything like that, and having, like, if I have to sign something, I have to say Barnett, and it's like, I don't want that to be my identity, because, like, with everything that happened, it's all connected to the Barnett name. And I don't want that to be connected to me anymore. I just want to start new and not have to look back and I don't want to have to, like, someone ask me, what's your name? I don't want to say Natalia Barnett. I want to say Natalia Mans because that's who I am. I'm a Mans. I'm not a Barnett. Like, me and my family have had to pay the price for their decisions with pain and suffering and just a whole bunch of roadblocks. And so now I feel like they should be the ones to have to pay the price. Legally, I feel like they got away with it.
Legally, they did. Publicly, they're not, because people know and are gonna see as these things get uncovered what they have done. Because you don't go through this much stuff to do something to a person unless you're hiding something.
As long as I've known them, all they've done is lied.
What this adoption will do is kind of pave the way for anything you want to do legally in the future, because the evidence will speak for itself.
They're hiding something.
Yep. With this adoption, I'll be legally a part of the family, so that way I'll be protected while I do civil suits against the Barnetts. You know, abuse, neglect, and a whole bunch of other stuff that should not have happened.
Michael and Natalia are meeting again. Michael on one side and Natalia on the other. Will Michael reveal any secrets? Of course, Natalia wants answers, but she's running a risk here because Michael has triggers.
I tried.
Let me talk to you. Let me talk to you.
Michael, leave me alone!
Is she running the risk that he's gonna get up and walk out again?
You ain't about to weasel your way out of this. He's got to come back and man up and stop being a little whiny baby.
He acted like a coward.
This is round 2. How many other secrets are there? You have to fight to get to the truth.
I'm not scared anymore.
You deserve to have some answers.
It begins with a quiet that feels wrong, the kind of silence that presses against the ears, heavy, expectant, the kind that settles over a town just before something breaks. On a gray morning in rural Oregon, in the spring of 2000, the phone rings and keeps ringing inside a small house at the edge of the woods, unanswered, while outside the mist clings to the trees like it's trying to hide them. By noon, people will say they sensed it, that something was off, that the air itself seemed to hold its breath. By nightfall, the word cold case will already be whispering its way into conversations, even though no one dares say it out loud yet. The house belongs to a young woman who has lived here almost her entire life, a place where everyone knows the sound of your car before they see it, where childhood friendships are older than most marriages. She is reliable, predictable, the kind of person whose routines are so steady they become invisible. She goes to work. She comes home. She calls her mother every Sunday evening. She locks her door. When she doesn't show up that morning, it doesn't feel dramatic at first. It feels like a mistake. A missed alarm. A bad road. An excuse waiting to be explained. But the excuses don't come. The hours stretch. The routine fractures. And by the time someone finally drives out to check on her, the silence inside the house has turned into something else entirely. The front door is unlocked. Her purse is on the counter. Her keys are where she always leaves them. There are no signs of a struggle, no broken glass, no overturned furniture, just the unsettling order of a life paused mid-sentence. A cup in the sink. Shoes by the door. The television remote on the arm of the couch. It looks less like a crime scene and more like a photograph taken too early, before the subject was ready. The first responding officer will later say the neatness bothered him more than any mess could have. People don't vanish from tidy rooms, not without a reason, not without leaving something reflecting the moment they were taken. Word spreads fast, faster than the patrol cars can move. By mid-afternoon, neighbors are standing in clusters at the ends of driveways, voices low, eyes scanning the tree line as if expecting answers to step out from between the trunks. This is Oregon, where forests stretch on forever, where distant swallows sound, where a person can walk into green darkness and never be seen again. The search begins with good intentions and nervous energy. Volunteers comb trails they've walked 100 times. Dogs pull at their leads, confused, catching scents that lead nowhere and everywhere at once. Helicopters cut slow circles through the sky, their blades beating the air into submission. And still, there is nothing. No sign. No call. No trace. The media arrives before nightfall. Vans line the narrow road. Cameras turn toward the house, toward the woods, toward the faces of people who have never learned how to look normal while being watched. Headlines start to form even before facts are confirmed. Mysterious disappearance. Beloved local woman missing. By the next morning, the phrase cold case is already hovering on the edges, unspoken but implied, a threat hanging in the air like smoke. Investigators push back against it, insisting it's too early, that hope remains, that missing does not mean gone. But privately, they know how these stories often end, and how rarely they end well. They start with the obvious. Family. Friends. Co-workers. Anyone who saw her in the last 48 hours. Her workplace confirms she never arrived. Her phone last pinged somewhere near home, then went silent. Credit cards unused. Bank accounts untouched. It's as if she stepped out of her life and left it running behind her. The interviews blur together, a parade of concerned faces and rehearsed timelines. Everyone remembers something small, something that feels important now but didn't then. A car driving too slowly. A stranger at the gas station. A look that lingered a second too long. Investigators collect it all, knowing that most of it will lead nowhere, but that somewhere in the noise, a single detail might be screaming. And then there are the childhood friends. The people who grew up with her, who know the back roads, the shortcuts through the woods, the places locals go when they don't want to be seen. They come forward willingly, cooperative, almost eager to help. They speak of shared memories, of late nights and inside jokes, of a bond formed long before adulthood complicated everything. One name appears again and again, not because of suspicion at first, but because of proximity. A friend who lived close. A friend who spoke to her recently. A friend who knew her schedule better than most. At this stage, it means nothing. In small towns, everyone knows everyone. Proximity is not guilt. Familiarity is not motive. At least, that's what they tell themselves. Days turn into weeks. The searches grow quieter, then sporadic, then ceremonial. Yellow ribbons appear on trees and fences, fading slowly under the Oregon rain. Candlelight vigils draw crowds who mean well but don't know where to direct their grief yet. Investigators widen the net, chasing tips that arrive at all hours. Some are cruel hoaxes. Some are desperate guesses. A few feel promising, just enough to raise hearts before dropping them again. Each dead end leaves a residue, a thin layer of frustration that settles over the case, making everything harder to see. Evidence is thin. Too thin. The house offers nothing beyond absence. Forensics finds no blood, no clear signs of violence. The woods keep their secrets. Without a body, without a crime scene, the case hovers in an uncomfortable limbo, not quite missing person anymore, not quite homicide. It exists in that gray space where certainty goes to die. Detectives argue strategy behind closed doors, debating whether they are chasing a ghost or missing something obvious. The public grows restless. The media begins to drift. New stories replace old ones. But for those closest to her, time does not move forward. It circles, endlessly, around the moment she disappeared. As months stretch on, theories harden into beliefs. Some insist she ran away, started a new life somewhere beyond the trees, beyond the cameras, beyond the expectations that weighed on her here. Others reject that outright, pointing to her habits, her attachments, her plans for the future. This was not a woman preparing to vanish. This was a woman expecting tomorrow. The tension splits the community quietly, politely, the way small towns fracture, without ever admitting it. Conversations stop when certain people walk into the room. Glances linger a beat too long. Trust erodes, grain by grain. Investigators revisit the childhood friend more than once, not because of evidence, but because of unanswered questions that refuse to settle. Timelines that don't quite line up. Statements that shift just enough to be noticeable. Nothing explosive. Nothing that would justify an arrest, or even public suspicion. Just enough to write notes in the margin, to circle dates, to keep a name from being crossed off the list. In another case, in another city, it might have meant more. Here, it's swallowed by the lack of anything solid. Without proof, without pressure, the trail cools. The case slows. Files grow thicker, then dusty. Years pass. New detectives inherit old boxes. Technology changes. Techniques improve. What once seemed impossible now feels merely difficult. The phrase Oregon 2000 cold case begins to appear in databases, in conference presentations, in quiet conversations between investigators who specialize in the unresolved. For the community, the disappearance becomes a ghost story told carefully, a cautionary tale wrapped in nostalgia. For the family, it is a wound that never closes, reopened by every anniversary, every rumor, every call that turns out to be nothing. And somewhere beneath it all, beneath the forests and the memories and the unanswered questions, the truth remains still, waiting. Waiting in a detail overlooked. Waiting in a friendship misunderstood. Waiting in a silence that has lasted far too long. The case is not over. Not really. It's only sleeping, cold and patient, holding on to its secrets as the years pile up, daring someone to look again, to listen harder, to ask the one question that hasn't yet been asked in the right way. The years don't announce themselves when they pass through a cold case. They seep in quietly, unnoticed at first, until one day the calendar says a decade has gone by and the town realizes it has been living alongside an absence for far too long. In Oregon, the forests grow thicker, the roads are repaved, storefronts change hands, but the space she left behind never fills. Her name becomes a reference point, a before and after marker in conversations that drift late into the night. People say things like, "That was before she vanished," or "not long after the disappearance," as if time itself bent around the moment she was last seen. Inside the sheriff's office, the file never truly closes, but it does move. It shifts from desk to shelf, from shelf to archive, labeled carefully, revisited cautiously. New detectives open it with fresh eyes and old instincts, reading reports written by people they've never met, trying to hear urgency in ink that has long since dried. They notice the same things their predecessors noticed, and then, slowly, they begin to notice different things. Patterns that didn't exist before start to emerge when viewed from a distance. Small inconsistencies become louder when placed side by side. The case resists them, pushes back, as if aware it's being watched again. Technology changes the rules without asking permission. DNA, once a luxury, becomes routine. Databases grow. Genealogy, once a hobby, becomes a weapon. Investigators start asking questions that would have sounded like science fiction in 2000. Who touched what? Who was where? Who shared blood with whom? Evidence that once seemed useless is pulled from storage, re-examined under brighter lights. A hair. A fiber. A trace so small it was almost dismissed. The problem remains the same. Without a confirmed crime scene, without a body, every advancement feels like a key without a door. The community senses the shift before it's explained. Patrol cars linger longer on familiar streets. Questions resurface, carefully phrased but unmistakable. People who thought they'd said their piece years ago are asked to say it again, only slower this time, only more precisely. Memory is a fragile thing, warped by repetition and rumor, but investigators press anyway, knowing that truth sometimes hides in the spaces between what people remember and what they wish they could forget. Old friendships are tested under the weight of new scrutiny. Polite smiles strain. Doors close a little faster. The childhood friend's name rises again, not abruptly, not dramatically, but persistently, like a note that refuses to fade. He has aged, just like everyone else, lines etched into a face once familiar from school photos and yearbooks. He has a life now, a job, a routine, a version of himself that feels far removed from the boy who shared secrets and shortcuts through the woods. When detectives sit across from him again, years later, the room feels smaller than it should. He answers willingly, calmly, repeating details he's repeated before, but something in the cadence has changed. Or maybe it hasn't, and that's what troubles them. They compare transcripts. Statements from 2000 against statements from years later. The words are similar, but the emphasis shifts. Times slide by minutes, then hours. Innocent explanations surface easily, but doubt has a way of multiplying once introduced. Investigators don't accuse. They listen. They let silence do the heavy lifting. Sometimes silence cracks. Sometimes it holds. In this room, it holds just long enough to raise more questions than it answers. Outside, speculation grows louder. Social media does what small towns used to do in whispers, amplifying theories until they feel like facts. Online forums dissect every rumor, every photograph, every half-remembered anecdote. Armchair detectives build timelines and tear them apart. Names are floated, dismissed, resurrected. The childhood friend becomes a fixture in these conversations, not officially, not publicly, but undeniably. His proximity to her life becomes a lens through which everything else is viewed. In the absence of certainty, suspicion finds fertile ground. Investigators uncover something else, something that doesn't scream guilt, but refuses to be ignored. A discrepancy in a phone record. A vehicle sighting that doesn't match earlier accounts. A gap in time that was once written off as insignificant. Each detail alone is harmless. Together, they form a shape that looks uncomfortably intentional. Still, it isn't enough. It never is. Cold cases demand patience, and patience demands restraint. They continue to collect, to corroborate, to wait. The family watches all of this from the outside, invited in only when necessary, shielded when possible. Hope has become a careful thing, handled with gloves, because hope hurts when it breaks. They've learned not to trust sudden bursts of attention, not to read too much into renewed interest. And yet, every knock at the door sends a tremor through the house. Every unfamiliar number on the phone feels heavier than it should. Closure is a word they hear often, but it remains abstract, distant, like a place they can see but never reach. As investigators dig deeper, they revisit the woods, not physically, but conceptually. Maps are redrawn. Old search grids are studied, criticized, improved. They ask whether something was missed, whether terrain, or weather or assumption guided eyes away from the truth. Forests in Oregon are patient. They erase tracks. They swallow sound. They keep what they are given. The idea that the answer might still be there, beneath needles and moss, is both comforting and horrifying. Comforting because it suggests finality. Horrifying because it suggests how close everyone might have been. The childhood friend notices the change too. Questions from neighbors grow awkward. Invitations thin out. He becomes careful about what he says and where he says it. Innocence doesn't protect you from suspicion once it's decided you belong to the story. Every action is reinterpreted. Every silence is suspect. The weight of being remembered for one thing, and one thing only, begins to show. Whether he feels guilt or fear or frustration is impossible to tell. From the outside, they look the same. Behind closed doors, detectives debate strategy. Push harder and risk losing cooperation, or pull back and risk losing momentum. They know that cold cases don't break open with force. They unravel with pressure applied just long enough, just gently enough. They review what they have again, and again, and again. Somewhere in these pages, they believe, is the thread that ties everything together. Not a confession. Not yet. Something smaller. Something human. A mistake. Time continues to pass, indifferent to urgency. The case ages into legend, into cautionary tale, into unresolved chapter taught to new recruits, as an example of how complexity hides in familiarity. Oregon 2000 cold case becomes shorthand for persistence and frustration, for how answers can live just out of reach for decades. And still, the silence holds. No body. No charges. Just the steady hum of a case refusing to die, circling the same names, the same places, the same unanswered why. What remains most unsettling is not what's known, but what isn't. The sense that the truth has been brushed against, almost grasped, then lost again. The feeling that someone, somewhere, knows exactly what happened on that quiet morning when the phone rang and rang. The knowledge that the distance between solved and unsolved can be as thin as a sentence spoken at the right moment. In this town, under these trees, that moment feels close enough to touch, and impossibly far away all at once. By the time the case reaches its second decade, it has developed a gravity of its own, pulling everything nearby into its orbit. New crimes are measured against it. New disappearances are whispered about in comparison. Oregon 2000 cold case becomes less a file number and more a presence, an unresolved tension that hums beneath daily life. Detectives learn to live with it the way residents do, aware of it even when they aren't looking directly at it, feeling its pull whenever they drive past the edge of the woods, or see her photograph resurface in an anniversary article. The turning point doesn't arrive with sirens or headlines. It comes quietly, buried inside a routine audit of old evidence, the kind of procedural housekeeping that rarely leads anywhere dramatic. A junior analyst flags a note scribbled in the margin of a report from the early days, something about an item collected and logged, but never fully examined, because it didn't seem relevant at the time. Back then, resources were stretched thin, urgency was high, and assumptions filled the gaps where certainty should have been. Now, with time as their ally, investigators are less forgiving of shortcuts. They pull the item. They relabel it. They send it through processes that didn't exist when the case was young. The result isn't a revelation. It's a suggestion. A partial profile. Enough to reopen conversations that had gone stale. Enough to justify knocking on doors again, asking questions that people thought they'd buried with their past. The childhood friend is on that list, not because of a sudden leap to guilt, but because the case has always orbited him, tracing the same elliptical path without ever landing. When they call him in this time, the tone is different. Less casual. Less forgiving. The years between interviews weigh heavily in the room. They don't accuse. They never do at first. They lay out facts instead, arranging them carefully on the table like pieces of a puzzle that almost forms a picture. Timelines are read aloud. Locations are revisited. He listens, nods, corrects small details, the way people do when they believe accuracy is the same as innocence. But something has shifted. The investigators aren't asking him to remember anymore. They're asking him to explain. Explain why his account of that morning has changed subtly over time. Explain why a vehicle resembling his was seen near a trailhead he once denied visiting. Explain why certain calls appear on his phone records and not on hers. The air thickens. Silence stretches. He fills it with words, reasonable words, plausible words, the kind that fit neatly into the gaps left by memory. And yet, the more he speaks, the more the investigators sense the strain of someone balancing competing versions of the same truth. They note it. They don't react. Pressure is applied slowly, carefully, like turning a screw a fraction at a time. They know that cold cases don't break under force, they fracture under repetition. Outside the interview room, the case accelerates. The partial profile is run through expanding databases, including genealogical records that map connections across generations. It's a long shot, they know that, but cold cases live on long shots. Weeks pass with no results. Then a hit appears, faint but undeniable, pointing not to a name, but to a family tree. Branches spread outward, narrowing with each generation. Investigators follow the lines patiently, eliminating, confirming, recalculating. And slowly, inevitably, the lines begin to converge. The convergence points back to what they already suspected, which is both satisfying and terrifying. Satisfying, because it suggests they weren't wrong all these years. Terrifying, because it suggests the answer has been sitting in plain sight, hidden not by complexity, but by familiarity. The childhood friend's name surfaces again, this time not as a person of interest, but as a potential endpoint. Still, potential isn't proof. Not yet. They need something that moves the case from suspicion to certainty, from narrative to fact. The community feels the shift even before the media confirms it. Unmarked cars appear where they haven't before. Conversations lower when certain names are mentioned. The childhood friend becomes aware of it too, though whether he understands its significance is unclear. He keeps his routine, but it looks forced now, deliberate, as if normalcy itself has become a performance. People watch him the way they watch storms forming on the horizon, unsure whether to be afraid or simply prepared. Investigators circle back to the woods, this time with intention sharpened by data. They don't search randomly anymore. They search with purpose, guided by revised maps and new theories. Ground-penetrating radar hums across forest floors. Cadaver dogs move with focus, their handlers alert to every change in behavior. The forest resists them, as it always has, but resistance doesn't mean refusal. It means patience is required. And patience, by now, they have in abundance. When the media finally catches on, the headlines feel different. Less speculative. More restrained. Phrases like, renewed interest, and breakthrough possible, replace the dramatic language of earlier years. The phrase cold case solved begins to appear cautiously, often followed by question marks, qualifiers, legal caveats. The public leans in again, older now, more skeptical, but no less hungry for resolution. For many, this case has become a measure of faith in the system itself. If this can be answered, maybe anything can. The family is brought in, gently, carefully. They are told that progress has been made, that nothing is certain, that expectations should be managed. They nod, having learned this language well. But something in the detective's posture, in their choice of words, betrays a confidence they haven't heard before. Hope stirs, unwanted and unstoppable. It frightens them more than despair ever did. Despair, at least, was predictable. The childhood friend is asked for another sample. Another conversation. Another opportunity to clarify inconsistencies. This time, he hesitates. Just a fraction of a second too long. Enough for trained eyes to notice. Enough to be written down, time-stamped, remembered. The sample is collected. The machinery of modern forensics does the rest, grinding patiently toward an answer that cannot be negotiated with or explained away. When the results come back, they don't shout. They don't dramatize. They state, plainly, that the profile matches within a statistical margin so narrow it might as well be absolute. The room goes quiet. Decades of questions compress into a single moment of clarity. Oregon 2000 cold case is no longer just unresolved history. It has a direction now. A face. A name that has always been there. But even as the word solved begins to settle into official language, something resists finality. There is still no body. Still no confession. Still no single moment that explains everything that followed that quiet morning. The law can identify a suspect, build a case, move toward accountability. It cannot restore what was lost. It cannot answer every why. And so, even in resolution, the case remains haunted by absence. The childhood friend sits alone with the weight of it, whether guilty, or simply trapped by circumstance, the distinction now a matter for courts rather than whispers. The town holds its breath again, the way it did years ago, waiting for something to break. And in that waiting, the case reveals its final cruelty, that even when answers come, they arrive too late to erase the damage done by years of not knowing. The forest stands unchanged, witness to everything and custodian of nothing it chooses to keep. The silence that once felt wrong now feels familiar, worn smooth by time. And somewhere between closure and doubt, the story settles into its final form, not as a clean ending, but as a reminder that some truths, once uncovered, only deepen the shadows they were meant to dispel. The announcement doesn't land like a verdict. It lands like a shockwave that travels slower than sound, rippling outward through courtrooms, living rooms, diner booths, and forest roads that have carried too many unanswered questions for too long. The words, identified as suspect, hang in the air, heavy and unfinished, and the town reacts the way it always has, quietly, cautiously, as if raising its voice might wake something better left asleep. Oregon 2000 cold case is no longer just a story about disappearance. It has become a mirror, forcing everyone to look back at what they thought they knew. Investigators move with renewed urgency, but also with restraint sharpened by experience. They know that identification is not the same as conviction, that decades-old cases collapse under their own weight if rushed. Every step now must be measured, documented, defensible. They reconstruct the final days again, this time with a different center of gravity. Conversations once considered background noise are replayed as potential confessions disguised as casual remarks. The childhood friend's proximity to her life is no longer contextual, it is central. His movements are mapped minute by minute, not just for the day she vanished, but for the weeks before and after, searching for preparation, panic, or pattern. They revisit his relationships, too, past partners, old arguments, unresolved resentments that never made it into early reports, because no one thought they mattered. People remember things differently when the stakes change. A comment that once seemed harmless now carries an edge. A memory long dismissed resurfaces with unsettling clarity. Investigators understand the danger of retrospective suspicion, but they also know that silence breeds omission. They listen carefully, separating corroborated detail from emotional reconstruction, building a framework that can survive scrutiny. The suspect is brought in again, this time under circumstances that feel unmistakably formal. The room is the same, but the atmosphere is not. He senses it immediately. His posture tightens. His answers shorten. Where he once volunteered explanations, he now waits for questions, weighing each word. The detectives do not confront him with the full scope of what they know. They don't need to. The pressure comes from implication, from the knowledge that the case has moved beyond theory and into consequence. They talk about the woods. About trails and shortcuts only locals would know. About how easy it is to get lost when you think you know exactly where you're going. They ask him to describe places from memory, to orient himself without maps. His descriptions are detailed, precise, perhaps too precise. He corrects them when they get something wrong. It's a small thing, but it lands heavily. Familiarity is a double-edged blade. Outside the station, the media circles carefully, aware that one wrong headline could poison a potential trial. The phrasing is cautious, legal, almost sterile. Suspect identified. Cold case breakthrough. But beneath the restraint, the hunger is palpable. This story has lived too long without resolution. Viewers lean closer. Readers scan for meaning between the lines. Online, speculation reignites with renewed ferocity, but now it carries an undercurrent of fear. Fear of having been wrong. Fear of having been right. The family is informed again, this time with fewer caveats. They are told what can be told, and shielded from what cannot. Relief and grief collide inside them, inseparable, indistinguishable. Knowing who may be responsible does not return what was taken, but it does give shape to the pain, a target for emotions that have wandered aimlessly for decades. They ask questions investigators cannot answer yet. When? Where? Why? Each one lands unanswered, not out of cruelty, but out of limitation. Search efforts resume in earnest, driven by refined data and renewed will. Areas once dismissed as too vast or too compromised by time are reconsidered. Technology peers beneath soil that has shifted and settled for years, reading disturbances invisible to the naked eye. Dogs alert in places that feel simultaneously promising and hopeless. Each alert raises expectations that have learned to be cautious, almost defensive. Nothing is assumed. Everything is verified. Still, the forest offers only fragments, disturbed earth here, an anomaly there, suggestions rather than revelations. The suspect's world shrinks. Friends distance themselves, unsure what to say or how to say it. Routine becomes fragile, easily disrupted by a passing patrol car, or an unfamiliar face. He is no longer just a man living his life, he is a subject under observation, his past replayed by strangers searching for motive. Whether he feels guilt, or simply the suffocation of suspicion, is impossible to tell. From the outside, the distinction blurs. Prosecutors enter the conversation cautiously, reviewing evidence with the skepticism that comes from knowing how easily old cases unravel under cross-examination. They ask hard questions. Why now? Why him? Why did it take so long? Investigators answer with timelines, data, probabilities, acknowledging gaps they cannot fill. The absence of a body looms large, an undeniable weakness. But the accumulation of circumstantial weight begins to tell its own story, one built not on a single dramatic moment, but on 1,000 small consistencies aligning at last. The phrase, cold case solved, appears again, this time without question marks in some outlets, though always tempered by legal reality. Solved does not mean finished. Solved does not mean healed. It means the direction of doubt has narrowed, that the chaos of possibility has collapsed into a single path forward. For the town, this is both comfort and curse. Comfort because uncertainty has an end. Curse because certainty demands reckoning. As proceedings inch closer to formality, the suspect's silence grows heavier. Lawyers advise caution. Words become liabilities. The story that once flowed freely now constricts, leaving behind gaps filled by inference rather than explanation. Investigators note it without commentary. They have learned that silence can speak volumes, but only when paired with patience. The community watches, torn between relief and regret. Relief that the nightmare may finally have an answer. Regret that the answer appears to have been so close, wrapped in familiarity, hidden in plain sight. They replay memories, searching for signs they missed, moments they misread. In doing so, they confront an uncomfortable truth: that evil rarely announces itself, and that proximity does not guarantee understanding. As the case edges toward its next phase, the emotional weight intensifies. Every development feels final, even when it isn't. Every delay feels ominous. The forest remains unchanged, indifferent to human timelines, holding whatever secrets it still keeps without intention or malice. And beneath the procedural momentum, beneath the headlines and hearings, the core mystery persists, not of who may have done this, but of how a single morning could fracture so many lives, and how the echoes of that fracture can last longer than anyone ever expects. The silence returns, not as absence, but as anticipation. Something is coming. Not closure, not yet, but confrontation. The kind that forces truth into the open, whether it arrives whole or broken. And in that waiting, the case tightens its grip once more, reminding everyone that resolution, when it comes, rarely looks the way people imagine it will. The legal process moves forward without ceremony, grinding and methodical, stripping the story of its cinematic edges and replacing them with procedure, language, and rules that care nothing for emotion. Court filings reference dates and exhibits, not fear or grief. Names are reduced to titles. Events are pinned to timelines that pretend certainty is possible. For those who lived inside the story for years, this translation feels almost violent, as if something vast and human is being compressed into margins and footnotes. Yet this is how cold cases cross the threshold from mystery to judgment, one document at a time. Behind the scenes, investigators and prosecutors work in uneasy partnership, each side probing the case from a different angle. Detectives want coherence, a narrative that explains motive, opportunity, and means. Prosecutors want survivability, evidence that can withstand attack, skepticism that borders on hostility. Every assumption is challenged. Every inference is interrogated. The absence of a body returns again and again, an empty space in the center of every conversation. It is the defense's strongest weapon, and the prosecution's greatest vulnerability. The question is no longer what happened, but whether what happened can be proven. The suspect's past is dismantled piece by piece. Financial records. Old emails. Witness statements pulled from years earlier and held up against current testimony. Nothing dramatic surfaces, no explosive secret life, no obvious trigger that explains everything in a single stroke. Instead, there is a slow accumulation of tension, of minor conflicts and unresolved dynamics that, when layered together, suggest something darker beneath the surface. A friendship that shifted. Expectations that collided. Resentments that never found release. It is not a story of sudden violence, but of pressure quietly building. Investigators return yet again to the final known interactions between the suspect and the victim, replaying them with almost obsessive focus. A casual meeting. A familiar route. A shared history that made everything seem safe until it wasn't. They analyze tone, timing, body language described by witnesses long removed from the moment. Human memory frays under this kind of strain, but patterns emerge anyway, imperfect but persistent. The idea that danger could arrive disguised as familiarity becomes harder to ignore. The town responds in fragments. Some people cling to the belief that the wrong man has been targeted, that coincidence and proximity have been mistaken for guilt. Others feel a grim sense of validation, replaying old discomforts they never voiced aloud. Most sit somewhere in between, exhausted by years of uncertainty, and wary of embracing a conclusion that might unravel. Conversations grow cautious. Opinions are expressed softly, if at all. In a place this small, words have a long afterlife. The media shifts tone again, adapting to the gravity of legal proceedings. Sensational language gives way to careful phrasing, expert commentary, and endless speculation about outcomes. Former detectives, legal analysts, and psychologists weigh in, each offering a framework that promises understanding without delivering certainty. Viewers consume it hungrily, hoping that clarity will emerge from repetition. It rarely does. Instead, the case becomes a prism, refracting the same facts into countless interpretations. For the family, this phase is its own kind of ordeal. They are present but peripheral, witnesses to a process that determines their future without ever fully including them. Every hearing reopens wounds they've learned to live with, exposing them to scrutiny they never sought. They listen as strangers debate the most painful chapter of their lives with professional detachment. Closure is mentioned often, but it remains elusive, a concept invoked more than experienced. As the trial approaches, the pressure intensifies. Motions are filed. Evidence is challenged. Timelines are contested down to the minute. The defense argues contamination, coincidence, the unreliability of memory stretched across decades. The prosecution counters with convergence, probability, the unlikelihood that so many small indicators could align by chance. Both sides prepare narratives, because in the end, that is what trials demand, a story that feels true enough to believe. The suspect appears increasingly isolated, shielded by legal counsel and silence. Public appearances are rare, controlled, stripped of spontaneity. He becomes less a person than a symbol, an embodiment of the question that has haunted the town for years. Did we miss this? Did we know him at all? Innocent or guilty, he is already transformed, fixed in the collective memory as the man at the center of the storm. Searches in the woods continue intermittently, driven as much by necessity as by hope. Each new attempt carries diminishing expectations, tempered by the reality of time and terrain. Still, investigators persist, guided by the belief that truth, even delayed, has a way of surfacing. They catalogue every anomaly, every disturbance, refusing to concede that the landscape has erased all evidence of what occurred. The forest remains indifferent, offering no confirmation, no denial. As opening statements draw near, the case tightens into a single moment of anticipation. Years of investigation, speculation, and waiting converge on the question of whether the law can deliver an answer where time could not. The town holds its breath once more, caught between the desire for resolution and the fear of what resolution might reveal. Because whatever the outcome, nothing will return to what it was before that quiet morning in 2000. In the stillness before judgment, the case reveals its final truth, that cold cases do not end cleanly. They bleed into the present, reshaping lives long after the original moment has passed. Solved or unsolved, they leave behind scars that do not fade with verdicts. And as the courtroom lights prepare to come on, illuminating every flaw and fracture in the story, the question that has lingered for decades hangs unresolved in the air, not whether the case can be closed, but whether anything, after so much time, can truly be put to rest. The courtroom feels smaller than anyone expects, compressed by history, by expectation, by the weight of a case that has outlived almost every assumption made about it. Wood paneling absorbs sound. Benches creak under the shifting of bodies, who have waited years to sit here. When the suspect is brought in, there is no gasp, no dramatic reaction, only the quiet recalibration of a room adjusting to the physical presence of someone who has existed for so long as an idea. Oregon 2000 cold case has finally taken human shape, and the air tightens around it. Opening arguments begin without flourish, restrained by the understanding that spectacle would cheapen what has already cost too much. The prosecution speaks of patterns, of convergence, of how chance erodes when repetition accumulates. They avoid promises. They avoid certainty. Instead, they offer a roadmap, inviting the jury to walk slowly through decades of absence, through data that didn't exist before, through inconsistencies that once hid behind the chaos of an early investigation. This is not a story of impulse, they say, but of familiarity weaponized, of trust turned into access. The defense follows with equal calm, their tone almost gentle. They speak of gaps, of the dangers of hindsight, of how cold cases tempt investigators to fill silence with meaning. They remind the jury that time degrades memory, that technology dazzles, but does not replace proof. They lean hard on what is missing: no body, no eyewitness, no confession. They frame the case as a tragedy compounded by desperation, where proximity has been mistaken for guilt and coincidence elevated to cause. Reasonable doubt, they insist, lives comfortably here. Witnesses take the stand in careful sequence. Former neighbors, old co-workers, friends whose recollections have been replayed so many times they sound rehearsed even when they are sincere. Each one brings a fragment of the past into the present, reconstructing a life from angles that never quite align. Some testify with confidence. Others falter, unsure whether they are remembering events, or remembering the way they've remembered them before. The jury listens, watching not just words, but hesitation, tone, the spaces between sentences where uncertainty leaks through. Experts follow, translating complexity into charts and probabilities. DNA analysts explain margins so small they approach inevitability, while acknowledging the impossibility of absolute certainty. Digital specialists walk through phone records and location data, reconstructing movements long erased from consciousness. Each presentation tightens the narrative, reducing the room left for randomness. And yet, with every answer given, a new question forms, hovering just out of reach. The suspect remains still through it all, expression carefully neutral, eyes forward. He listens as others describe his past, his actions, his proximity to a woman who has become more symbol than person in this room. When his name is spoken, it carries an unfamiliar weight, as if repetition has transformed it into something heavier than identity. He does not react when timelines place him near the woods, when experts describe matches that trace back to him with statistical precision. Silence becomes his shield, or his prison. The family sits together, absorbing testimony like physical blows. They hear details they never asked for, speculations they never wanted, fragments of a final day they've replayed in their own minds for years. The process demands their presence without granting them control. Grief resurfaces in unexpected ways, triggered by a phrase, a photograph, a hypothetical reconstruction. They learn quickly that justice is not therapeutic, that truth delivered through procedure can still feel brutally incomplete. As days pass, the rhythm of the trial settles in. Morning arguments. Afternoon testimony. Evenings filled with analysis from every angle imaginable. The town watches from a distance, divided between those who trust the system to deliver clarity and those who fear it will only formalize doubt. Conversations return to old patterns, cautious and fragmented, as if certainty itself has become suspect. Everyone knows that whatever happens here will not stay contained within these walls. The defense begins to press harder, challenging assumptions with precision. They point out investigative missteps from the early years, moments when evidence could have been lost, contaminated, or misinterpreted. They question the reliability of witnesses revisiting memories decades old. They emphasize alternative explanations, planting seeds that do not need to grow tall, only wide enough to cast doubt. The prosecution counters methodically, acknowledging flaws without conceding failure, reframing imperfection as inevitable rather than fatal. Tension builds not through drama, but through accumulation. Each day adds another layer, another perspective, another reason to hesitate or believe. Jurors take notes, their faces betraying nothing, tasked with carrying a burden that will follow them long after the verdict is read. The phrase, "beyond a reasonable doubt," echoes repeatedly, stretching to accommodate a case that resists simplification. Outside the courtroom, the forest remains unchanged, untouched by arguments or verdicts. It does not respond to being named in testimony, to maps projected onto screens, to experts explaining how easily a place like this can conceal truth. It simply exists, indifferent, holding whatever it holds without obligation. The contrast is unsettling, a reminder that human systems operate on rules that nature never agreed to follow. As the prosecution rests, a sense of anticipation ripples through the room. This is the moment the case is supposed to feel complete, its narrative fully assembled. Instead, it feels precarious, balanced on the edge of interpretation. The defense prepares its final counter, ready to exploit every uncertainty left unresolved. Everyone senses that the outcome will hinge not on a single revelation, but on how the sum of parts is weighed against the voids that remain. When closing arguments approach, fatigue sets in, deep and pervasive. Years of waiting have led here, and yet resolution feels oddly distant. The case has revealed too much to be simple, and too little to be absolute. As the judge prepares to instruct the jury, the room holds its breath once more, suspended between past and future, between the desire to conclude and the fear of concluding wrong. And in that suspended moment, the cold case shows its true nature, not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a test of how much uncertainty people are willing to live within the name of justice. Closing arguments arrive without relief, heavy with the knowledge that whatever is said now will echo long after the courtroom empties. The prosecution speaks first, not with anger or urgency, but with a controlled gravity that suggests inevitability. They walk the jury back through the years, through the disappearance, the stalled investigation, the long silence, and the eventual convergence of evidence that pointed again and again to the same individual. They emphasize not any single piece, but the way the pieces align, how coincidence collapses under repetition, how probability narrows until it leaves only one reasonable conclusion. This, they argue, is how cold cases are solved, not by miracles, but by patience and persistence. The defense responds with equal composure, their tone almost sympathetic. They caution against mistaking accumulation for certainty, against allowing the weight of time to press a verdict into being. They remind the jury that unanswered questions are not proof, that absence can be misread as implication. They point again to the missing body, the missing moment, the missing explanation that would transform suspicion into fact. Justice, they insist, requires restraint, especially when the story feels emotionally complete, but evidentiary gaps remain. The judge's instructions are precise, clinical, stripping emotion from the task at hand. Jurors are reminded of their duty, of the burden of proof, of the difference between belief and knowledge. When they file out to deliberate, the room exhales, a collective release of tension that has nowhere else to go. The case, for the first time in decades, is no longer being built or argued. It is being weighed. Deliberations stretch into hours, then days. Outside, reporters speculate in careful language, parsing body language and offhand remarks. Inside the jury room, the conversation is quieter, more personal. They return again and again to the same questions. How much doubt is reasonable? How much absence is acceptable? Whether the shape of the story feels complete enough to justify a conclusion. Some jurors focus on the science, on numbers that feel reassuring in their precision. Others linger on what isn't there, the silence at the center of the case that no expert could fill. The town waits, caught in a familiar paralysis. Businesses keep running. School buses follow their routes. Life continues, but with a subtle drag, as if everyone is moving through water. Old arguments resurface in hushed tones. Some people prepare themselves for relief. Others brace for disappointment. No outcome promises peace, only change. When the jury returns, the room stills in a way that feels almost unnatural. Even the air seems to pause. The verdict is read carefully, deliberately, each word carrying the accumulated weight of years. Guilty, or not guilty, either way, it lands with the same force, because neither can undo what has already been done. In this case, the words confirm what many suspected and others feared, pushing the story across a line it can never recross. The reaction is muted, restrained by the understanding that victory and loss are meaningless labels here. The family absorbs the decision in silence, faces unreadable, emotions too layered for display. The suspect reacts minimally, as if braced for this moment long before it arrived, or as if the meaning of it has yet to fully register. The judge thanks the jury, acknowledges the difficulty of their task, and brings the proceeding to a close with procedural finality that feels almost cruel in its efficiency. Sentencing is scheduled for a later date, another chapter waiting to be written, but the heart of the case has already passed. Oregon 2000 cold case is no longer unresolved history. It has crossed into record, into precedent, into something that can be cited and archived. For the legal system, that is success. For the community, it is something more complicated. Outside the courthouse, cameras capture reactions that struggle to find language. Some speak of justice served. Others of lingering doubt. Most simply acknowledge exhaustion. Years of speculation have ended, replaced by a reality that must now be lived with. The forest, unchanged and unbothered, stands as it always has, holding whatever truth remains beyond the reach of law. In the days that follow, the town begins the slow work of adjustment. The story is retold, this time with an ending, though the ending never sounds quite right. People test the word closure in conversation, finding it ill-fitting, too neat for something this messy. The absence that once defined the case does not disappear with a verdict. It simply changes shape. For the family, grief evolves again, this time into something edged with finality. Answers bring relief, but they also bring new questions that will never be asked in court. For the convicted, the future collapses into appeals, paperwork, and a life defined by a single act, whether fully explained or not. For the jurors, the case follows them home, a quiet companion that surfaces in unexpected moments. And for everyone else, the case settles into memory, a cautionary tale about how easily the familiar can become dangerous, and how long truth can hide in plain sight. The cold case is solved, officially, decisively, yet the unease it created does not vanish. It lingers, woven into the identity of the place, a reminder that resolution is not the same as peace, and that some stories, once told, never really end. Time resumes its slow, indifferent pace after the verdict, but it does not erase what has been said out loud. The courtroom empties, microphones go silent, and the case slips from the present tense into the past, yet the town does not feel lighter. If anything, it feels exposed, as if a long-held secret has finally been spoken, and now everyone must live with the sound of it. Oregon 2000 cold case solved becomes a headline, then a reference, then a phrase people hesitate to say, because solved suggests an ending that no one quite feels. Sentencing looms like an aftershock rather than a conclusion. Legal briefs continue to circulate, dense and unemotional, while conversations outside the system struggle to keep up. The family returns home to a house that still carries absence in every room. Photographs feel heavier now, no longer suspended in uncertainty, but anchored to a truth that arrived decades too late. They replay the trial in fragments, certain words, certain glances, trying to understand how something so intimate became something so public, how their private grief became a matter of record. The convicted man is transferred, processed, absorbed into a system built to contain outcomes, not explanations. His name appears on paperwork, on schedules, on lists that reduce identity to classification. Those who knew him search their memories for signs, for moments they might have misunderstood. Some find them easily. Others find none at all. Both reactions carry their own kind of guilt. Innocence and blindness begin to feel uncomfortably similar when viewed through hindsight. Appeals are discussed almost immediately, a reminder that finality in law is often provisional. Attorneys dissect the trial with surgical focus, identifying potential errors, points of contention, places where doubt might be reintroduced. The possibility of reversal hovers, unsettling those who believed the verdict marked an end. For the family, it threatens to reopen a door they have just begun to close. For the town, it reinforces a lesson learned too well, that certainty is fragile, and resolution can be temporary. Media attention fades gradually, not because the story loses importance, but because attention always moves on. New headlines crowd out old ones. The case is archived, revisited only on anniversaries, or in long-form retrospectives that attempt to capture its complexity in a single narrative arc. Commentators debate its significance, its implications for cold case investigations, its reliance on evolving technology. They speak confidently about lessons learned, as if the process itself can be distilled into guidance. Yet beneath the analysis, discomfort persists. The absence of a body remains an unhealed wound in the story, a void that evidence could not fill. The forest never gave back what it took, and that silence resists interpretation. Some believe answers still lie beneath the canopy, waiting for a season or a storm to reveal them. Others accept that some truths will remain incomplete, forever inferred rather than confirmed. Both beliefs coexist, uneasily. The town adapts in small, almost invisible ways. Parents become more watchful. Friendships are scrutinized differently. Familiarity loses some of its comfort, replaced by a cautious awareness that knowing someone does not mean understanding them. The case becomes a reference point in conversations about safety, about trust, about how easily assumptions can harden into blind spots. It is no longer just a tragedy, it is a lesson, though one learned at an unbearable cost. For investigators, the case becomes part of professional identity, cited quietly among peers as proof that persistence matters, that time does not always defeat truth. But privately, doubts linger. They revisit decisions made years earlier, wondering what might have changed had resources, technology, or perspective been different. Success does not erase regret. It reframes it. The family visits the woods once, not to search, but to stand in the place that has come to symbolize everything taken from them. The trees are indifferent, the ground unchanged. There is no revelation, no sense of communion, only the steady realization that places do not carry answers unless people leave them behind. They leave with no more clarity than when they arrived, but with a strange acceptance that not every question demands resolution to be lived with. As seasons pass, the case settles into its final form, not as closure, but as coexistence. It lives alongside daily routines, resurfacing unexpectedly in news segments, in academic discussions, in the quiet moments when memory drifts without warning. The words cold case solved retain their power, but they no longer promise peace. They simply describe a status, a legal outcome, a line drawn through uncertainty that does not erase what came before it. And in the background, always, the forest remains, unchanged and unknowable, a silent witness that never testified and never will. It stands as a reminder that even when human systems reach conclusions, the world does not always agree to explain itself. Some truths emerge through effort and time. Others remain buried, not out of malice, but because they were never meant to be found. The story, though officially finished, continues to echo, not loudly, not dramatically, but persistently, in the way unresolved feelings echo long after the facts have been decided. It becomes less about what happened and more about what remains, about how a single disappearance reshaped a community, a justice system, and the idea of certainty itself. And in that echo, the case finds its quiet afterlife, solved on paper, unresolved in spirit, and permanently etched into the place it changed forever. The appeals process stretches time again, pulling the case back from whatever fragile stillness it had settled into. Legal language replaces human language, and the story is told once more, this time through filings and arguments stripped of tone and emotion. Errors are alleged. Procedures questioned. Words like prejudice, contamination, and admissibility circulate, cold and precise. For the family, it feels like being asked to relive the ending of a nightmare after finally waking up, proof that resolution, once granted, can be provisional. Courtrooms reopen, quieter now, attended by fewer observers, but the tension is sharper for its intimacy. Judges listen, not to stories, but to structures, whether the trial followed the rules closely enough to be trusted. The facts themselves are no longer on trial, the way they were presented is. It's a reminder that justice depends as much on process as on truth, and that even the most compelling narrative can unravel if its foundation is flawed. The convicted man becomes a central figure again, this time as an appellant rather than a defendant. His posture shifts subtly, from resignation to guarded expectation. Hope, however faint, has a way of reasserting itself when the possibility of reversal exists. His legal team dissects testimony line by line, highlighting ambiguities that once seemed insignificant. A phrase taken out of context. A probability misunderstood. A memory stretched too thin by time. Each point alone feels minor. Together, they threaten to reopen a door many believed had closed for good. The prosecution responds with equal rigor, defending the integrity of the original trial and the convergence of evidence that led to the verdict. They argue that perfection is not the standard, that reasonableness is. That decades-old cases cannot meet impossible thresholds without rendering justice unattainable. The debate becomes philosophical as much as legal. How much uncertainty society is willing to accept in pursuit of accountability, and how much doubt is necessary to undo it. Outside the courthouse, the town watches with a familiar mix of detachment and dread. People have learned not to invest too heavily in outcomes, not to trust that endings will hold. Conversations resume their cautious rhythm, acknowledging developments without committing to belief. The case has taught them restraint. Whatever happens now will simply be another layer added to a story already too heavy to carry lightly. Media coverage returns in muted tones, framed by words like possible reversal and ongoing legal battle. Analysts revisit the case with renewed skepticism, scrutinizing what once seemed settled. Old debates resurface, fueled by the same evidence now viewed through a different lens. Certainty fractures again, reminding everyone how quickly confidence can dissolve under scrutiny. The family feels the strain most acutely. They had begun to build a future around the verdict, to imagine a life where the case no longer dictated their emotional landscape. Now that future feels unstable again, balanced on legal arguments they cannot influence. They speak less publicly, retreating inward, guarding what little peace they've managed to reclaim. Hope and fear intertwine, indistinguishable. As months pass, the appeals court deliberates in silence, its decision forming far from public view. The waiting returns, familiar and unwelcome. It feels like a regression, a step backward into the same uncertainty that defined the years before the case was solved. The difference now is memory. Everyone knows what it feels like to believe, and what it costs when belief is threatened. When the ruling finally comes, it does not bring drama, only a measured affirmation that the trial stands, that the verdict holds. Relief is cautious, almost tentative, as if people are afraid to trust it. The family exhales, slowly, unsure whether this breath will last. The legal system moves on, its task complete, but the emotional residue lingers, thick and unresolved. The case settles again, this time with deeper grooves carved by repetition. It becomes a reference not only for how cold cases can be solved, but for how fragile solutions can be. Investigators cite it in training sessions, emphasizing patience and precision. Defense attorneys cite it as a warning about reliance on inference. Both are right. The story resists ownership. In the town, life resumes its quiet routines, but the case remains present in subtle ways. A pause before trusting. A hesitation before assuming familiarity equals safety. The disappearance has reshaped perception, altering how people read each other, how they interpret silence. The forest still stands at the edge of all of it, unchanged, a constant reminder of what was lost and what was never fully recovered. As the years continue to pass, the case fades from headlines, but not from memory. It becomes part of the town's identity, a shared history that surfaces unexpectedly, in moments of reflection or caution. Oregon 2000 cold case solved remains true in a legal sense, but emotionally, philosophically, it remains open, a reminder that answers do not always bring the relief they promise, and that some truths, once uncovered, only deepen the questions they were meant to resolve. Years slip by again, quieter this time, without court dates to mark them, without headlines demanding attention. The case no longer interrupts daily life, but it never fully releases its grip either. It lingers in the background, a low-frequency hum beneath the town's routines, audible only when everything else goes still. Oregon 2000 cold case solved becomes something people reference in passing, a fact rather than a breaking story, yet the weight of it has not diminished. It has simply settled deeper. The family learns what it means to live after answers. Not closure, not healing, after. Birthdays come and go. Holidays arrive with their familiar ache. There is no dramatic turning point where grief resolves itself into peace. Instead, there is adaptation. They learn how to speak her name without their voices breaking every time. They learn which questions to stop asking, not because they've been answered, but because they no longer have anywhere to land. Acceptance does not feel like relief. It feels like endurance. The convicted man disappears from public consciousness, absorbed into the machinery of incarceration. His appeals exhausted, his future defined by walls and schedules, he becomes a statistic, a line in annual reports about cold case resolutions. Those who once knew him struggle to reconcile the person they remember with the person the record now describes. Some sever the connection entirely. Others carry the conflict quietly, unsure which version to believe. The human mind resists neat conclusions, especially when familiarity is involved. Investigators move on to other cases, but this one follows them, resurfacing in conversations with new recruits, in lectures about patience and persistence. They speak about the importance of revisiting evidence, of questioning assumptions made under pressure, of understanding how time can obscure as much as it reveals. Privately, they remember the cost, the years of doubt, the families who waited, the moments when the case felt impossibly distant. Success, when it finally came, did not erase those memories. It added to them. The town changes, slowly, inevitably. New families move in, unaware at first of the story woven into the place. They learn it gradually, through careful explanations and softened language. The disappearance becomes part of local law, told with restraint, as if excessive detail might summon something unwelcome. Children grow up knowing the case not as news, but as warning. Don't assume. Don't wander alone. Don't confuse familiarity with safety. Occasionally, someone claims to have new information. A rumor surfaces. A theory circulates online. Each time, it flickers briefly, then fades, unable to compete with the finality of the legal record. People have learned the cost of reopening wounds without cause. Curiosity gives way to caution. The case has taught them the difference between interest and responsibility. The forest remains unchanged, though people look at it differently now. Trails once walked without thought are approached with awareness. The woods are no longer just a backdrop, they are part of the story, a silent participant that never clarified its role. Some believe answers are still there, hidden beyond reach. Others believe the land has taken what it will never return. Both beliefs coexist, and neither offers comfort. As time creates distance, reflection replaces urgency. The case becomes a lens through which larger questions are asked. How justice evolves. How technology reshapes truth. How long society should wait before declaring an answer sufficient. There are no consensus conclusions, only ongoing conversations, sparked whenever the story resurfaces in documentaries, podcasts, or academic studies. Each retelling emphasizes something different, because the case contains multitudes. For the family, the story eventually shifts from how she was lost to who she was. They reclaim her from the narrative that reduced her to absence. Photographs are displayed again, not as reminders of tragedy, but as proof of life. They speak of her laugh, her habits, her plans that never had the chance to unfold. In doing so, they resist the final theft, the erasure of personhood by a case number. The phrase cold case solved remains accurate, but incomplete. It describes a legal achievement, not an emotional resolution. It marks the end of investigation, not the end of impact. The community understands this now, instinctively. They know that answers do not rewind time, that accountability does not restore what was taken. What it does offer is orientation, a sense of direction in a story that once had none. As the decades